Hi, I'm Lauren Grace with the Rainforest Art Project, and today we will be exploring colours and mood. So when you observe great artists through history, you can ask yourself, how does their artwork make me feel? You can be sure that their use of colour is very well thought out and deliberate. If they are using a warm palette, then perhaps they want to invoke a sense of joy or power. And if they use a cool palette, perhaps they want to communicate a peaceful atmosphere or even a sense of sadness. And it's up to us to decide how it affects us. That is the beauty of art. It's subjective, meaning it's personal to us. But let's begin by using some blending techniques with oil pastels as well as tempera paint, and then we will create an abstract image using the blending techniques with oil pastel. One side in warm hues and the other in a cool palette. Then, with that experience, we will create two still lifes using the same image, one with cool colours and the second in warm colours. And lastly, a pointillism still life with complementary colours and how to mix colours without actually mixing them. Sounds fascinating, right? So let's get started. Okay, so first we want to spend a little bit of time getting to know our oil pastels, so learning how to blend them is key. And we're also going to explore the warm and cool colors. So here I have a nice selection, 12 oil pastels. So I'm just going to tip them out so it's easier for me to access them. I won't really need the black right now, so I'll just leave that out of there. So I just want to get at least 3 warm colors. With blending colors, you definitely need 3 or more to blend in the same family, which means in the same family, they're in the warm color family. And then if we had our cool colors, they would be in the greens and blues. And even the pinks, actually, we could go with those 3, would be nice. And we'll keep our white handy because that's also nice for blending as well. Something else you'll need to have close by is something to clean your pastels on. So you can either use a paper towel to clean off your pastels or another little piece of paper which you can use to kind of keep cleaning them along the way. Otherwise, the colors will get kind of mixed up. So first of all, on your practice paper, just create a nice rectangle and then another one. So one's going to have your warm colors and one's going to have your cool. So we're going to have our warm colors there and our cool colors here. So something else you want to think about is using a fairly light pressure. This is going to help with blending, okay? So also I'm using the very side of my oil pastel as I'm pressing down, and I'm just coloring from side to side to get my first little layer of oil pastel on there. So I want that to be a little bit darker so I can go back over it. You can also use like a circling technique, which I think is called scrambling. And that will also get the color into the paper. And then I'm going to use a much lighter pressure for this next little section here, where I will have my orange overlapping. So my orange is going to overlap. I'm using a firmer pressure now as I blend those 2 colors together. You can try doing that little bit of a circling motion to get the color to connect and blend. I'm using a watercolor paper here, so it's quite thick paper with a tooth on it, which they call it a tooth, which it has a little bit of texture on it, so that can pick up the color. So there you go, I'm ready for my lighter application of the orange, and then I will bring yellow over, and I'm using a firmer pressure now as I blend those 2 colors together. Can you see how they create another color as they blend together? So a different shade. And then I'm just going to use white coming in from the outside in towards the yellow, and then you can see what happens there. We're going to create another shade of yellow, very light yellow, where our white is blending with the yellow. And there we have some very nice blended warm tones or hues. Okay. Now we have our cool colors, so starting with a nice firm pressure. So So this is exactly the technique we're going to use on our abstract piece in a moment. So if you can get these, get this experience down, then you'll be well prepared for your abstract, cool and warm art piece. So now I'm using firm pressure over that area that was a much lighter pressure, so I can blend the darker shade with the lighter shade, and a much lighter pressure next to it. And then I'm going to bring over pink, so that is in the cool family. It's such a cool family, but you know what color it's going to create as it blends with the blue. It will start to make a light shade of purple. And using that circling motion to marry those colors or blend those colors together a little more effectively. And there we have our cool blend. Alright, so here we have some tempera paint, and we're going to just play with, we've got primary colors here, and we're going to create some secondary colors. And also I've got a little bit of white paint, so I can show you how you can begin to change and shift the tone. So let's start here with a little bit of this beautiful red paint. I'm just going to pull some of that red paint over to this spot right here, and then I'm going to pull some of that yellow over, and we're going to begin to blend it and creating, it's going to be more of an orange tone, but this one ends up quite peach because our yellow is very light, so it's a really nice shade there. And so if I pull in some of that white, then we start to blend it right there and create another color, which is fun. If you bring in more red, and it's going to start to be a little bit more pink, and if you pull in more yellow, you get a more light peach color. Okay, so you can play with your colors like this. I love doing this. This is one of my favorite things to do with paint, is create lots of different colors. Alright, so here, if I'm bringing some red over towards the blue, make a little puddle of it there, and then bring over the blue, I'm going to start to create a very dark purple. It's beautiful. And that purple can be more on the red tone or more in the blues. You decide, depending on what you need it for. And then if I pull over some of that white, then we start to get a really lovely light purple. Maybe it's more on the red tone, or maybe it's more on the blues. Starts to be more of a periwinkle. This is kind of a periwinkle color, which I love to work with. So you've got quite a few things going on there. And now if I pull some of that blue over here and some of that yellow, what do you think is going to happen? Yes, that's right. Green. Beautiful shade of green. Kind of more on the teal, so bring more yellow. Keep blending. Really fun colors happening. And then if I bring more blue, it's more on the turquoise or teal shades. And then I can just pull some of that white in there. And then we have just a really fun plate. I need to start a painting now. I've got all these beautiful colors together. What could we paint? This would be good for pointillism. So that's a good prep for pointillism, because with pointillism you're placing the colors next to each other, and as you step away from the painting, your eye actually does the blending for you. So it's kind of a fun experiment to play with later. So I look forward to that. Okay, so we want to start with our abstract piece, and we've got our warm family of colors, and we've got our cool family of colors, and then we've got our couple of sticks of white, and then some extra paper to kind of clean off our pastels, oil pastels, as we're moving along. So all I'm going to do to begin with is to divide the page on the angle there. So I'm just going to create kind of a wiggly line to divide the page, and then on one side I want to make another shape, and on this side we'll do it in another color, because this will be the cool side with a warm section in there. So you get the idea. So you want to use the firm pressure to begin with as you're beginning to draw down one side. So this will be the predominantly cool side, and then this will be the warm side. So I'm using that firm pressure as I travel. So this happens often when I'm working with pastels, is that they break, so don't worry about it. That just happens all the time because you're using a firm pressure. So just to get that initial application down, and then I'll show you, we'll add to that a lighter pressure, and you might remember why we do that. It helps us blend the next color in. So you're going to start with a very firm pressure and then a lighter pressure, and that's when you bring the next color, the next level of shade, and overlap. And as you can see, that begins to blend those colors together. You can use your finger to drag that darker color down towards the lighter color. So you remember the rule of threes, which is we always use 3 or more colors to blend, and then also we want to go from darker towards light to get the blends correct. And then you can move that out to a lighter shade. All right, so that's what we'll be doing all the way down here, and then we'll be using those same colors in this section right here, and then we'll move on to use the warm shades, dark to light, moving out, and then fill in this section with our warm colors. So here we go. Alright, there we have it. So there's our warm and our cool colors, and a little bit of the other in the other sides, a bit like a yin and yang side. Okay, so hopefully that gets you warmed up and ready to use your oil pastels on your still life. Okay. Alright, so we're going to do a still life composition with our oil pastels. We want to sketch out our composition first on this watercolor paper, and we're wanting to use just cool colors for this particular composition, continuing to think about mood and how a piece of artwork makes us feel. Once we've completed our cool colors, we can contemplate on how it makes us feel. So first I want to sketch out my composition. So just remembering how we gridded out the page, you can do sort of a mental grid, as in think about how that grid works out, or you can apply the grid to your printout if that's what you're using. Otherwise you might be using a live composition right in front of you. So you can also use your pencil as a measuring tool to help you map out your image. So I'm just kind of going with what I've got here. So this is the top of my composition of my vase and the base. So you're only going to have an hour to really work on 2 images, so don't get too hung up on perfection, but just really more about applying color. So then you want to pick out all your cool colors, so just looking at what you have available to you, and then also we were learning earlier about blending some of the colors or overlaying some white onto bolder colors to kind of smooth them out and make them a little bit more neutral or softer. So now that I have these lemons, I'm going to be wanting to use actually yellow and green to help me communicate that they are lemons. So remembering that you want to just get a very light application on so that you have a little bit more control over how the color blends. If you're wanting to create lighter areas, then you want to create a very light application so that you can add some white on top of that and it won't be so saturated with color. So obviously with our use of color, these might end up looking a little bit more like limes than lemons, but that's okay. We're just wanting to get the communication across that we're using cool colors versus warm colors. So we have to get creative with the colors that we use. So I'm going to pick up all the darker tones and the flowers first. Remember, we want to work from dark to light. And remembering that hatching and cross-hatching technique that we learnt, you can use that here as well. Alright, so there's a cool version, and now we get to work on a warm version using all the warm tones that we have here, warm hues. So let's get started on that one. Alright, so now we're ready to start our warm still life using all our warm tones and hues in our pastels. I also have brought the black in there as well. We might be able to use a little bit of that in there too, but we want to use a very little amount of black because it can take over, so maybe the darker browns for shading. And we have the same image, so I've done a quick sketch of that, and here you have warm tones right here. So let's get started with our warm still life. Alright, there we have our completed oil pastel still life with the warm hues, warm colours. So good luck with your own.
This is Lauren Grace signing off with the Rainforest Art Project, changing the world, one piece of art at a time.